Welcome to Lotus Heart Teachings. Today, we're diving deep into an emotion we all experience, but often struggle with: anger. What if I told you that with the wisdom of Buddhism, we can transform anger from a source of destruction to one of clarity, peace, and even strength? Stay with us as we explore 8 life-changing lessons from the Buddha that will help you control anger and turn it into a tool for personal growth. You won't want to miss this transformative journey. 1. Self-reflection. Like an uninvited storm, anger often erupts without warning, sweeping us into a chaotic frenzy. But what if the key to controlling that storm lies not in fighting it, but in understanding its origins? Self-reflection is the hidden weapon we often overlook when dealing with anger. Imagine a moment when a simple comment from a friend sets you off. It's not about the words they say. It's about the emotional residue from past experiences or unmet expectations that ignites the fire within. Buddha teaches us that the mind is everything. What you think, you become. This profound insight isn't just about the power of positive thinking. It's about recognizing that our emotional triggers are rooted deep within us. We often think anger is a reaction to the external world, but in reality, it's a reflection of unresolved emotions within ourselves. What if that sharp comment from a colleague isn't just about their words, but a reminder of a childhood experience where you felt ignored or undervalued? Understanding these internal connections shifts our perspective completely. It's not about the situation at hand, but the emotional history we bring into it. Imagine sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and asking yourself, why am I so upset? What you might uncover is a deeper, more complex reason that had nothing to do with the present. Perhaps you've been carrying a weight from past failures, or you're frustrated by unspoken expectations you've set for yourself. This moment of introspection reveals that your anger is not the problem. It's the result of unmet needs or old wounds you haven't addressed. Take the story of James, who would fly off the handle every time his partner mentioned something trivial. The argument would escalate into something uncontrollable. But after he started practicing self-reflection, he realized his reactions weren't about his partner's words. They were a projection of his fears of abandonment and insecurity from childhood. Understanding this allowed him to approach conflicts with a new mindset, choosing understanding over reaction. Imagine the relief James felt when he was no longer a slave to his outbursts, but the master of his emotions. Now picture this. The next time you feel anger rising, instead of letting it burst forth like a tidal wave, pause and reflect. What if, in that quiet moment, you could understand that your anger is merely a messenger telling you that there's something deeper at play? Wouldn't that be a powerful shift in how you handle life's challenges? 2. Don't let others control your emotions. Have you ever found yourself spiraling into anger after a simple comment from someone? You feel the heat rise, your chest tightens, and before you know it, the situation has escalated. What if I told you the true power lies not in reacting, but in choosing how to respond? This is the essence of Buddha's wisdom. Don't let others control your emotions. It's a lesson that, once mastered, can transform your relationships and bring a deep sense of peace. Let's take a step back and think about this. How often do we let external circumstances, particularly the words or actions of others, dictate how we feel? It's so easy to be pulled into someone else's emotional chaos, but the moment we react impulsively, we surrender control of our peace. We become a puppet to someone else's strings, and the consequences are often regret and emotional turmoil. Picture this scenario. You're having a good day when suddenly, a colleague makes a sarcastic remark. In that moment, everything shifts. Your mood drops. Your thoughts race. Before long, you're angry. But here's the twist. Your anger isn't about the comment itself. It's about how you chose to let it affect you. The Buddha teaches that we are responsible for our happiness. When we react impulsively, we abandon that responsibility and let someone else's actions dictate our emotional state. Take the story of Anna, a woman who would instantly snap whenever her mother made an offhand comment about her life choices. It was like clockwork. One comment, and her whole day was ruined. But when she started practicing mindfulness and observing her thoughts, she realized something astonishing. Her anger wasn't coming from the comment. It was a reflection of her insecurities and fear of judgment. Anna wasn't just reacting to her mother's words, she was giving them power over her peace. By choosing to pause and respond thoughtfully, she broke free from the cycle of emotional reactivity. The real danger of allowing others to control our emotions is that we lose our sense of self. When we react impulsively, we're not acting from a place of clarity or strength. We're simply reacting to a trigger. This pattern can take root in any aspect of our lives, whether it's a comment from a friend, a disagreement with a partner, or criticism from a boss. The key to regaining control is mindfulness, being aware of your emotions in the moment without getting swept away by them. What if, instead of jumping into the storm of anger, you chose to remain calm, centered, and in control? Imagine how differently your relationships might unfold if you no longer allowed external comments to dictate your emotional state. You have the power to protect your inner peace. When you stop reacting impulsively, you take back control of your life. It's a challenging shift, but one that, once embraced, can be profoundly liberating. 3. Anger comes from ignorance. Anger is a fierce emotion, but what if it's not as powerful as we think? What if it's just a shadow of something deeper, something we don't fully understand? Anger often arises not from the situation at hand, but from ignorance, misunderstanding the intent, the context, or even the person who triggered the emotion. It's like being trapped in a maze, furious at the walls, but not realizing that you're the one holding the map. Imagine a situation where you and a colleague exchange harsh words. You're fuming, convinced they've crossed a line, but what if you're missing something crucial? Maybe they had a personal crisis that morning, or perhaps they didn't even realize their words had the impact they did. Without taking the time to understand the full picture, you act on assumptions, fueling your anger and pushing the situation into a downward spiral. This lack of clarity is where ignorance hides. You're reacting to a feeling, but not to the truth. The Buddha understood this deeply, recognizing that anger often stems from not knowing. A misunderstanding, an incomplete perspective, can lead to an explosion of emotion that could have been avoided with a moment of reflection. Take Sarah's experience. She had a falling out with a friend over what she thought was a betrayal. It wasn't until she took the time to listen to her friend's side of the story that she realized the so-called betrayal was a miscommunication. What if Sarah had acted on her initial anger? The aftermath would have been devastating. Understanding is the antidote to anger. When we take the time to uncover the layers beneath our emotions, we often find that the anger fades, replaced with empathy and calm. Ignorance isn't just about lacking knowledge. It's about failing to pause and truly see the situation for what it is. And once we do, the path to peace is clear. 4. Acknowledge anger as natural. What if anger wasn't something to be feared, but something to be understood? Anger is often seen as a force to be suppressed, but in reality, it is a natural human emotion, one that we all experience. Trying to push it away only intensifies its grip. But what if, instead of rejecting anger, we allowed ourselves to acknowledge it? By observing anger without judgment, we create the space to manage it thoughtfully. When we accept anger as part of our emotional landscape, we release ourselves from the guilt and shame that often accompany it. Anger isn't a reflection of who we are. It's a reaction to a specific moment or circumstance. The problem arises when we react impulsively or suppress it, allowing it to fester beneath the surface. Recognizing anger as natural allows us to approach it with curiosity instead of fear. This shift in perspective can be transformative. Anger is not inherently bad. It's simply an emotion, like any other. By acknowledging it without judgment, we gain the power to see it for what it truly is: a signal, a messenger pointing us towards something that needs attention. Whether it's an unmet need, an unresolved conflict, or a boundary that's been crossed, understanding the root cause of our anger gives us the clarity to choose how we respond. Instead of allowing anger to control us, we become the masters of it. We stop seeing it as an enemy and begin to use it as an opportunity for growth. When we accept anger, it loses its hold over us, transforming from a destructive force into a tool for deeper self-awareness and emotional intelligence. 5. Practice forgiveness. What if the key to breaking free from the chains of anger isn't fighting it, but letting go of it altogether? Forgiveness isn't just about pardoning others, it's about freeing yourself. Every moment spent clinging to resentment is a moment of your life taken hostage. Imagine the weight of anger and bitterness as an invisible burden you carry every day. It grows heavier with time, pressing down on your mind and soul, making peace seem out of reach. The Buddha teaches that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's a powerful analogy, highlighting how destructive unresolved anger can be, not just to others, but to ourselves. When we hold on to resentment, we keep the wounds of the past alive, feeding them with every thought. The real harm lies not in the actions of those who wronged us, but in our refusal to let go of the emotional hold they have on us. Forgiveness doesn't mean you erase the past or condone hurtful actions. It means you stop allowing those actions to control your present. By releasing resentment, you reclaim your peace. It's a radical shift in perspective, one that changes the trajectory of your emotional life. The moment you choose forgiveness, you choose freedom. You choose to stop being defined by the hurt and instead focus on healing. Imagine walking into a room where every piece of furniture represents a piece of unresolved anger. Now imagine clearing the space, removing all the objects weighing you down. That's the essence of forgiveness. It's the act of cleansing your emotional space, creating room for peace, clarity, and joy. By practicing forgiveness, you not only release the past, but you open the door to a future where resentment no longer dictates your reactions. 6. Use mindfulness. Imagine being in the midst of a heated moment. Your heart races, your mind is clouded, and the urge to react impulsively is overwhelming. What if I told you that in this very moment, the key to breaking free from the emotional storm is not to fight the anger, but to observe it? This is where mindfulness comes into play. Mindfulness is the ability to be fully present with your emotions, allowing you to step back and witness them without being swept away by them. It sounds simple, but its power is anything but. When anger arises, it feels like an uncontrollable force. It's easy to think that anger is something that happens to us, something that we can't escape. But the Buddhist teachings remind us that by practicing mindfulness, we create the space between stimulus and reaction. Think of it as a gap, a pause where you are not just a victim of your emotions, but an observer, fully aware of what's happening inside. In this pause, something magical happens. Instead of reacting immediately, you gain control. Take the story of a man named Jake, who once struggled with road rage. Every time someone cut him off, he'd explode, his entire day ruined by a few seconds of someone else's actions. One day, Jake decided to try mindfulness. Instead of letting anger immediately take over, he focused on his breath, noticing the physical sensations of tension in his body. By acknowledging his anger without judgment, he began to create a space to respond thoughtfully, rather than impulsively. Over time, his reaction to such situations changed entirely. He didn't react with rage. He simply let the situation pass without allowing it to consume him. Mindfulness doesn't ask us to suppress anger, but rather to engage with it consciously. When we acknowledge our emotions without judgment, we start to notice how temporary they are. They rise, stay for a while, and then fade. The problem is not the emotion itself, but our attachment to it. The more we attach ourselves to anger, the more power we give it over us. When we practice mindfulness, we break this cycle. We learn that emotions, including anger, don't have to control our actions. They can simply be part of our experience, observed without being acted upon. This awareness gives us the ability to respond with clarity, not impulsivity. Instead of lashing out, we can choose a response that aligns with our values, something calm and constructive. Imagine the freedom in that. By practicing mindfulness, you're not just managing anger, you're reshaping your entire relationship with it. No longer does anger have to dominate your actions. You can observe it, understand it, and choose how to respond, making each emotional moment an opportunity for growth. Mindfulness transforms anger from a destructive force into a tool for self-awareness. In the end, it's not about eliminating anger, but about choosing a new way to interact with it. Instead of letting it dictate your behavior, mindfulness gives you the space to decide your actions consciously. It's in this space that real change happens. 7. Gratitude. What if the key to managing anger wasn't about suppressing it, but about completely shifting your focus? Instead of fighting the feeling, imagine redirecting your attention to what is good in your life. This simple change in perspective has the power to transform how we experience emotions. Gratitude, when practiced consciously, has the remarkable ability to turn our mindset from one of lack to one of abundance, thereby diminishing anger and fostering a sense of inner peace. Anger often arises from a sense of deprivation, whether it's feeling wronged by others, frustrated by unmet expectations, or overwhelmed by a sense of injustice. In these moments, it's easy to spiral into negative thinking, fixating on what we don't have or what hasn't gone our way. But what if, instead of feeding this cycle of frustration, we chose to focus on the positive aspects of our lives? Gratitude offers a powerful antidote. By consciously choosing to acknowledge the blessings we have, whether big or small, we begin to shift our emotional state. Instead of magnifying the problems, we start to highlight the good. Gratitude doesn't ask us to ignore our anger or dismiss the challenges we face. Rather, it offers a path to find balance. By shifting our focus from what we lack to what we possess, we open ourselves to a more abundant emotional experience. Anger starts to lose its grip when we recognize how much we have in our lives. This shift doesn't just reduce the intensity of anger, it replaces it with a more grounded sense of peace. When gratitude becomes the lens through which we view the world, it changes the way we interact with our emotions. Rather than reacting with frustration, we respond with a sense of perspective and calm. Gratitude empowers us to move beyond the negativity and embrace a more peaceful, positive state of mind, transforming our emotional landscape one mindful moment at a time. 8. Strengthen self-control. He who can control himself is greater than he who conquers 1,000 men in battle. Buddha. In the heat of the moment, when anger surges like a tidal wave, what if you could simply stand firm, unaffected, and choose how to respond? The art of self-control is the ability to take a step back and decide, rather than being swept away by impulsive reactions. It's not about suppressing your emotions, but mastering them so they don't dictate your actions. Patience is the foundation of this power. When anger or frustration rises, the immediate instinct is to act, to lash out. But patience provides the crucial pause, a moment of reflection before you react. It's in this small window that self-control is forged. Without this moment, decisions are often made in haste, fueled by emotion, only to be regretted later. But with patience, you create space for reason to take the lead. You begin to act thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Mindfulness amplifies this power. When we are mindful, we observe our emotions without letting them define us. The key is recognizing anger as it surfaces, without letting it overwhelm us. In doing so, you no longer feel like a prisoner to your emotions. Instead, you become the observer. The moment of anger becomes a signal, not a command, and you can choose whether to heed it or let it pass. Discipline is the final pillar. Like any skill, self-control requires consistent practice. Whether through meditation, daily reflection, or simply choosing to respond with restraint, it's the habits we cultivate that strengthen our emotional resilience. Over time, self-control becomes second nature, allowing us to navigate the challenges of life with clarity, grace, and an unwavering sense of inner peace. As we've explored these 8 lessons from the Buddha, we've learned that managing anger isn't about suppressing it, it's about transforming it. Whether it's through self-reflection, forgiveness, mindfulness, or gratitude, each practice offers us a unique path toward greater peace and understanding. Remember, the journey to mastering anger is lifelong, but with patience, persistence, and compassion, we can navigate life's challenges with calm and grace. Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey at Lotus Heart Teachings. May the wisdom of the Buddha guide you toward a life of peace, love, and resilience.